Okay, let me talk to you for a second about exposure therapy. So, it's very interesting as I was watching this show last night, and if you can't sleep, one of the things that helped me is this guy, Daniel, I think his last name's Erickson, he's the sleep coach school, and he talks about how, exposure therapy in the sense that doing everything they say not to do to stop, like that stops you from sleeping, and seeing that your body will sleep anyway, like eating chocolate before you go to bed. Oh my gosh, don't ever do that. They say, like, sleep hygiene things, like, oh, the blue lights, keep them away, and oh, make sure your room is dark, and all this stuff, and doing the opposite of that so that you learn that you can sleep no matter what. And this is important for people who have insomnia, right? These things, like the blue lights and all that stuff, helps people who don't have insomnia. Like, they can help you sleep better, absolutely. But people have insomnia, you got to take a different approach to it. So that's what he meant by exposure therapy, in the sense that doing everything you were terrified to do, thinking that it would stop you from sleeping, to get over it. So let's talk about exposure therapy and OCD. Exposure therapy and OCD, from what I gather, is, okay, you're afraid of snakes. Well, then we're slowly going to think about snakes and then eventually introduce you to snakes and get you over it. The problem is that I think with anxiety is that when you have it, it travels from different things. So then you wouldn't have it with snakes anymore. But oh my gosh, a few months later, or a few, however long later, you would get it from something else. Like, you would then be afraid of, it would transmute to something else, because anxiety is anxiety, right? Like, some people are just more anxious than other people. But the way that you would deal with your OCD, and I think of exposure therapy, is like I mentioned in the book, which is doing the opposite of whatever your anxiety monster tells you to do. So your anxiety monster, he's there all day long going, oh, don't touch this, don't touch that, check it again. Did you check it? Are you sure? Did you Google it? Did you call the doctor? You better do it again. I don't think you found a good result. And on and on and on, telling you all this stuff to get you to do it, because that's how it stays strong. And so how you fight that is, in a way, exposure therapy, by either doing the opposite or not listening, like recognizing that that's it, or saying, I'll do that later, because you don't want to fight with anxiety. You don't want to have this battle, because anxiety is very strong. So just saying, I'll do that later. Yeah, I'll check it later. Instead of saying, no, I'm not going to do it no matter what. No, I'm not going to wash my hands no matter what. You know what? I'll check it later. I'll do it later. So in the sense, I think that is what I consider a really effective way of exposure therapy, as opposed to the other type that they mean that I discussed. So just think about that and consider that. I just thought about this. Or another way of exposure therapy is when something happens to you that would make you anxious. Think about it as exposure therapy. Like, yeah, you're dealing with this. Like, now you're full on in anxiety. So I had a bee sting. I got stung by a bee a year ago. And occasionally the bee sting will kind of flare up. It's getting smaller and smaller, and I went to the doctor. I mean, it's not all the time. And I went to the doctor, and he was like, no, there's nothing you can do about it. And, it's like, I read online, it's probably processing. Your body takes some time, different times, to process stuff, like the venom or whatever. So, but this freaks me out. As someone with health anxiety, this freaks me out, because I'm not used to it. It's not quote unquote normal in my mind. So, and I catastrophize. So I'm like worried that I'm going to be the person that, that this is like never happened to before, because I can't find anything about it online. And so this is it. This is what does me in, is, people aren't going to find me until it's like the final stages. Then they'll believe something's wrong with me. Do you know what I mean? So that's catastrophizing. And so automatically, when you catastrophize, if you catastrophize, and a lot of people with health anxiety, that's what we do. We catastrophize. You have to, the catastrophizing has no validity. So immediately, as soon as you start catastrophizing, you have to recognize that what you just said or what you just think on that topic has no validity. And so that's one of the things you have to realize and accept, that it has no validity. And the second is look at it as exposure therapy, because every time that happens, or that, that little bee sting swells just a tiny, tiny amount, and it is getting better, because it is swelling just a little less than last time before, and it's real tiny. But to me, this is exposure therapy, because it's a chance to deal with anxiety. Like, you're gonna face it again, right? Like, anxiety doesn't always leave you. It's just, you go from being a 10 to maybe being a 2 or 3, and you learn how to cope with it. You learn how to deal with it, per se. Like, your anxiety is, some people are more anxious, and I tell you in the book why some people are more prone to health anxiety than others. It's because you either had a parent who was very anxious, you knew someone who died of a disease, or so there's a few different reasons, right? But anyway, So look at every time that you are anxious as exposure therapy. Like, okay, now I get to deal with these feelings. What am I feeling? You know, and anyway, I have a bunch of different strategies in the book and in the videos. If you just watch the series, you'll see some different strategies to deal with it. Okay, bye-bye. For real. Can you say, please like and subscribe?
Please like you right.
And hit the bell for notifications.
Hit bell, you know, notification.